You grab the drive shaft, if it wiggles around, and here you can actually see that it's separated from the bearing. So this is about to go. Time to replace it. Welcome back to PCA's Garage. Today we have hopefully a simple task, a maintenance item on this 2006 Cayenne-esque. I've been monitoring the Cardan shaft bearing, which is a bearing that supports the drive shaft down the middle of the car. Now, if you've had this fail while you were driving, it makes a big racket underneath. It can be pretty alarming and actually makes the car undrivable. So I've been watching the deterioration of this bearing or the rubber around this bearing for quite some time. The car has about 120,000 miles or so. So now that I've seen that it's starting to break down, I've actually bought an aftermarket solution kit to install. It comes with a new rubber disc here. It comes with mounting bolts, but more importantly, it comes with this new mounting system, which comes in halves, and we'll show you how that works. And the whole idea is we'll be able to replace this without dropping the complete drive shaft. We'll be able to do it with the drive shaft in the car, and we're going to show you how. So let's go over the tools that you'll need for this project. You probably have most of the tools in your garage already, but there are a couple of tools that if you have, they'll make it go a little bit quicker. So I'm just going to go left to right and let you know what we use them for. Obviously, impact gun, cordless ratchet to remove those stubborn bolts. And if the bolts are stubborn, you'll need some penetrating oil. You'll need a cutoff wheel. If you don't have a cutoff wheel, you can certainly buy one. They have cheaper ones that are electric that you can use, or you can use something like a Dremel with a cutoff wheel to cut the metal on the housing of the original Cardan shaft bearing is not very thick. But having a good one makes things go faster. Having a little die grinder with a sandpaper pad, that's going to help you clean up the bearing itself once you remove the housing from it. You'll need quality razors as well as this little handy holder. You'll need a pick, and the pick you'll use to remove the seals off of the bearing itself. A flat bladed screwdriver also, and I've curved it a bit to help get the seals off the bearing. You'll need your various sockets, socket wrench, a pry bar. A pry bar really just to kind of move the drive shaft back and forth to align things, and also use it to help pull the old rubber disc from the mounting points. That's going to help out a lot. Same thing with the screwdriver is going to help you pry the rubber mounting disc off. And open-ended wrenches, 5mm Allen head, your handy dandy hammer, some thread lock, some new grease for your bearing, and finally, so that you see everything nice and bright, a nice little handheld light. So that's it. So to find out if you need to replace the bearing support, all you need to do is get your car up in the air, preferably on a lift. It'll make life much easier, but you can certainly do it on the ground. And take a look here. You'll see the rubber that surrounds the bearing. And if you grab the drive shaft, if it wiggles around, and here you can actually see that it's separated from the bearing. So this is about to go. Time to replace it. Now, some of you may be wondering, why don't we just simply replace the complete drive shaft that has a new mount already on it? The reason being is this is a Northeast car, and for those of you that are in drier climates, don't go through winters, you probably don't see this, but underneath this car, having survived numerous winters here in the Northeast, you'll see a lot of rust. And in order to replace the complete drive shaft, you're going to actually have to disassemble quite a bit, the exhaust and such. And to me, I think that would just be a much bigger project. So that's why we're just going to focus on replacing what's right here. So the first step is we're going to remove the mounting bolts here. This is, believe it or not, a 13mm, and I believe these are 16. Now with all the rust that's there, you'll have to grind down or get rid of the rust to make sure that your 13 mils and 16 fit nicely. Get up there. And there it goes. All right, so now that the mounting support bracket is off, you can see here, that's where, and watch, it's already, I mean, it's ready to give. It's already torn. So now what we need to do is get this bracket off, clean the rubber around the bearing, re-grease the bearing, and put it all back together. All right, now that this old bracket is off, what we need to do is cut this and bend it and pull it off. So what I've done here is I've just used a bungee cord to hold this stable. So I can now use this cutter and just cut that bracket in half. All right, now that we've cut in the metal bracket, let's just remove this here. Get these out of the way. Get our bracket over here. We gotta bend this bracket so that need to bend it enough so that we can get it over the drive shaft. There we go. All right, so here we are. We need to make sure we get all the excess rubber around the bearing because the new piece will actually fit around the bearing. So we need to clean this off the best we can. Sharp razor blades. A mask is actually very useful because all this stuff is falling on my face. So we'll keep cleaning it. So we're still cleaning off the rubber, the old rubber off the bearing. You might want to get yourself one of these, and let me show you the process to get the remaining off. This is just kind of wiggling in. Just be careful, don't use too much force because you don't want to slip and cut yourself, but just go around slowly and just peel off with the razor blade all the rubber. Okay, so I got most of the rubber off of the bearing, but there's still a little bit there, so I'm just going to clean it up with this sanding disc. And again, just lightly cleaning it up so it fits perfectly. Ooh. Okay, so the bearing is nice and clean now. All the rubber's off. Bearing still feels good. And we're going to clean it off and re-grease it. All right, so the next step that the manufacturer recommends is that we re-grease this bearing. So we're going to pop the seals off here with our little pick. Pop them off, there's 2 seals, load it up with quality grease, and then pack it all back together. So I used the pick tool to remove the outer seal, and then I used a flat-bladed screwdriver to get the inner seal. So what you want to be careful of is, one, make sure this whole area is clean because you don't want to introduce debris into the bearing. And then also, when you're pulling on these sleeves or seals, you want to make sure that you don't break them. That would be the worst nightmare ever. So again, make sure everything's clean. Just take your time. Don't damage the seals. And they will pop off just like that. And then now you can see the bearings on the inside, and it's quite dry in there. So it's a good thing that we are going to grease them up. Okay, make sure your hands are clean. Some fresh grease here. And we're going to stuff it inside the bearing. So this is wheel bearing grease. High temperature, so it should work nicely. And you can already feel the bearings roll smoother with this being packed. But make sure you get proper grease for it. High temperature is probably a good thing here. All right, so there you have it. All the seals are back in. It's been nicely greased, nice and smooth, no noises. Time to put on the new bracket. Okay, so this is how this all works. There's actually 4 5mm bolts that hold this piece together. And once you remove all 4 bolts, just put it on your bearing and then spin it into place. There you have it. On this one, top half is sitting there. Grab your bottom half and the appropriate screws or bolts. I'm just going to hand snug them for now. And remember, the longer bolts are for the flange that's closest to the bearing. Okay, so the top half slipped over top of the bearing. Now we're putting the bottom half on. The 2 longer 5mm bolts are for the inside points, and then the shorter ones are going to be for the outside holes. Now I'm just hand snugging them for now. Just make sure to check the fit. And you don't want to force it, you don't want to cross any threads. And let's just check to make sure this matches up with our mount. And sure enough, it does. Now, if you're paying attention, there's an angle on this bracket right here. This angle points to the front of the car. You can't really put it on backwards, but just so that you know, the angle part points to the front. Now this center piece is aluminum, so a quick tip for you here is not to over tighten these Allen bolts. Just tighten them, snug them up as much as you need, because it's really just encasing the bearing. So be careful not to over tighten it and stripping the aluminum. So to replace this rubber mount right here, we're just going to undo all these bolts and take everything out. Having an impact with a swivel socket should help, and having an 18mm wrench on this side. And what you'll want to remember is when you put the new bolt in, the washer is on this side as opposed to on the other side. Okay, so this is just pressure fitted, and I have a pry bar here. And you're just going to work your way around, and it'll just pop off the shaft there. And then it comes down. So now we'll use a pry bar and get this side off. Okay, so to pop these off, they're just pressure fit, but sometimes they need a little bit of encouragement. So just a small screwdriver to separate them out. There you go. Now this one doesn't seem too bad, but I do see some cracking already. And since we're already here, that's why we're replacing it. And you'll note these are the areas that are going to be recessed into the mount. So make sure you have the right hole going into here. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to loosely put all the bolts in. Again, remember the washer is going to be on the side where it's the rubber. So line everything up. Make sure you put some thread locker on the bolt. This is all new hardware that came with the kit. All right, before I tighten all of these up, I'm actually going to put this bracket just loosely so it pushes up on the axle and, you know, it just lines things up a little bit better. Just hand tightening everything for now. Okay, everything seems to be aligned. Now when you're tightening this, you want to make sure the sleeves go inside the mount. So make sure you pay attention to that. So what we noticed when we were installing the new bolts, they work fine here, but they seem to be a little close to this flange here. So we're going to take one of the older washers and just double up, and that way they stay clear. Okay, so the new bolts, something to take note of. What we took out of here, the factory ones were all 18 millimeter. The new ones are 19. So make sure you have the appropriate tools so you can tighten everything up. So we bolted everything here kind of loose, and then we started these screws. And just make sure that they're nice and straight before you go in, because you don't want to cross the threads when you're installing these bolts. And then you'll tighten these up. And then we'll now follow up and tighten all these. Okay, so we're all done. We've replaced the flex piece here with all new hardware. Replaced the center support for the bearing. And if you look, compared to our video before, I mean, hardly any movement. So hopefully that equates into no vibration, and we should be set for a few more thousand miles for this center support shaft.